La edad es solo un número es una producción de la Alianza Hispana, con el generoso patrocinio de Next 50 Initiative, a quienes agradecemos profundamente por creer en esta visión de construir una sociedad más justa, inclusiva y sin prejuicios de edad. Bienvenido a La edad es solo un número. Hola a todos y a todas, muchas gracias por acompañarnos a un nuevo episodio de este podcast que la Alianza Hispana está produciendo para todos aquellos que estén interesados en no solo en conectarse con otras personas hispanas, ¿no?, que tenemos la bendición de hablar español aquí en los Estados Unidos, sino también con personas que quieren crecer, que quieren conocer algo que les pueda ayudar no solo a ser mejores seres humanos, sino también ayudar a otros familiares. Los temas que estamos tratando, tal vez si nos han acompañado durante esta serie, es acerca de este gran problema que hay de la discriminación que las personas mayores de edad, ¿no?, tal vez personas mayores de 65 años de edad, viven todos los días. Pero no solo nombrar el problema es la solución, necesitamos entenderlo y necesitamos encontrar personas que nos ayuden a comprender. Así que el día de hoy tenemos a una invitada muy especial, ella es la doctora Caitlin Coyle. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Y vamos a tener esta conversación en inglés, pero quería comenzar en español. Y voy a dejar que ella se presente y vamos a estar hablando de algo muy, muy interesante. So, Dr. Coyle, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Our audience is Latino community, here in Boston mostly. Okay. And we want to talk about ageism and how we can build an age-friendly community here in Boston. So, but first of all, can you share more about your life, your work, in order to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you, Alberto. Yes, so my name is Caitlin Coyle, and I currently run a small research center just here in Dorchester at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. And my research center focuses on engaging older adults in the community in research projects, and also giving real life experience to students, graduate students and undergraduate students, to working with older adults in the community around Massachusetts. My background has been studying aging and public health in particular, and I have spent a lot of my time focusing on the issue of social isolation, and sort of how one version of that is sort of how communities either contribute to or present barriers to people being able to be connected socially, and certainly ageism is a part of that work. So that's sort of generally who I am. I have 3 young kids, and I love the work that La Alianza does here in the community, and really see myself as sort of a bridge between the academic knowledge that we know about what ageism is and how bad it is for us, and what communities need to combat it.
This is great. Maybe my first question is, since when you started having this desire to understand more about this topic? How come?
How come? Well, let's see, how come? One of the first things I did when I started graduate school was I started volunteering as a friendly visitor, and I was matched with an older adult in the South End, and I visited them once a week for about 4 years. And that experience really opened my eyes to the detriments of social isolation in particular, in terms of just how overwhelming it can be for a person's life, in terms of being able to just sort of get the basic things, go to the bank and do all those things, but also in terms of self-esteem and sort of fear, just sort of how it contributes to people's health and poor health. And so that was a pivotal experience for me in terms of wanting to focus not just on aging, but I think in terms of the barriers that older adults face in living full and vibrant lives in their community. And so that was really, I saw myself sort of studying this in the classroom, but also seeing it in my volunteer work. And so that's really what led me to wanting to combine those things into my career and my life's work, which is to really think about putting some evidence behind what some of these barriers are through research, but then also contributing that evidence to the solutions in the community.
I'm talking about solutions. What does an age-friendly community look like to you day to day?
Yeah, well, truly, my dream answer to that question is really that an age-friendly community is one in which age is not a factor. That sort of that is used to categorize people or spaces or places. You know, it's really an age integrated place where a community is the places and the opportunities that exist in a community are constructed and designed such that it is open and accessible to anyone of any age, and that we don't think about age as a characteristic to describe people, but rather it's about their abilities and their preferences. So that's, you know, we're a long way from that, but I think for me that's truly what an age-friendly community is one in which age isn't a thing that segregates people, you know, in terms of programs and services and things like that. But I think on a more practical level, and we're, you know, closer to where we are, it's certainly a place where older adults have not just the opportunity, but really the invitation to participate and be valued members of the community. So not just, oh, there's a place for you at this program or this building, but rather that they are truly thought of as important and integral members of how communities make decisions and how they plan and all of that. And so I think those are some of the key components, I think, for me.
And you use a word that for me is pretty important, is integration, inclusion. Because the other day we had Felix. Felix is almost 80 years old, something like that, and he's a runner. So he's part of this video podcast series, so please go and watch this episode. And he's pretty active nowadays, running every weekend, 5Ks, half marathons, and he's an example, an inspiration for me. But there is a community of runners in Boston. It's called I forgot the name, but it's mostly Latino men and women running together. Strive for Strive, this is the name. So, and these men, you know, like 80, I think 85, he found this place, you know, and he's running, and because he found an integration with other young people and mature, like his age. So this is the reason that I think it's pretty important.
Yeah, no, I think it's so true, and it's interesting that you raise that. I've seen examples of that in other communities. You know, we do work all over the state of Massachusetts, but in places where we have found this sort of true integration across generations, a lot of times has been around this shared interest. And I think there's a real, it's a real sort of example of how, you know, we talk about intergenerational relationships and opportunities, and there's a lot of value to that. But I also think that there tends to be an assumption that those are, you know, one way or one-sided interactions, you know, either that the young person is getting something from the older adult or vice versa. And, you know, theoretically we want it to be mutual, but I guess what I'm saying is the shared experience is so, I think, successful because it brings people he sought that out. He said, I'm a runner and I want to do this running, you know, and in other communities there's a swimming group that I'm aware of, and it's the same thing where somebody says, oh, I made this for my friend and he's in his 20s and I'm in my 80s, but we both love to swim and we met at swimming group. And so there's this mutual respect of like, you understand what I value and I understand what you value, and it's not, we're not being sort of, it's really authentic.
Exactly.
I think that's what I'm trying to say, is that those opportunities for people to come together around something they both care about creates a place for a really authentic.
And as you said, it's an invitation. It's pretty authentic because it's an open invitation to everyone. So the pain that brought us here today, or it was the inspiration to create this podcast, is this word ageism, you know, this discrimination. But what is ageism in plain language for you?
I think of ageism as, to me it shows up in three ways. It can show up in our thoughts. And so I think of that is stereotyping. Okay. So when we think, and it's sort of unconscious, right? We're not consciously having those thoughts, but so when we think of something, we have stereotypes about other people or about ourselves related to our age, whether it's young or old. That is a version of ageism.
So it's not just for older people, it's for Okay.
No, it's so interesting. I mean, I'm a relatively young person who has been studying aging for at least 15 years.
Wow.
And so the number of times that I am on the receiving end of ageism as a young professional is, I could tell you stories about that. And so it really is, it's about just anything related to your age and how you think about either other people or yourself. So that's one way. The other way is in the way we feel about age. And so I think of that as being, so they call that prejudice. But that's how we feel about it, and so that can come out. So ageism can come out through our feelings, and again, it's feelings about other people. Oh, I don't want to hang out with her; she's old, or about ourselves. I'm not feeling very good about myself because I'm just an old person who doesn't have any value. So that's our feelings is another way ageism shows up, and then the third, sort of more obvious one, is our behavior.
Yeah.
And that's this discrimination. So that's when I really change how I operate in my community based on age. So either I avoid going to the senior center because I'm not interested in that, or
and many people told me that.
Oh
like
my
I
gosh.
don't want to go to the
Yes,
adult day health center because I'm not too old.
I don't need to. Yes, we hear that all the time in our work, and so that third way is in our behavior, and so that's again ourselves. We can have those behaviors towards ourselves. So I might say I'm not going out at night anymore because I'm too old to do that. Which there may be valid reasons, but in any case, so there's the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we act, and all of that sort of shows up, and it's all based on using age and what it's associated with in those thoughts, feelings, and actions. And so it can be against young people, it can be against yourself, it can be against old people. It's really just, and I guess it comes back to that sort of, you asked me about what a age-friendly community looks like, and I sort of think, well, eventually I would love us to not have to even say age-friendly community, that we just are a friendly community. But I think that to me, it's using age and associating it with either stereotypes, feelings, or behaviors.
Yeah, and you give me this idea about this. The next question is, where do you see ageism more often? For example, in the media, healthcare, work, daily services, in your experience, in your work, how do you find?
Yeah, I see it the most, I think, within individuals against themselves. Honestly, like I see when I think of, when people say, can you think of examples of ageism? I see so much of it inherent in people thinking badly about themselves because of their age.
And this is the more dangerous one, right?
I think so. It's the hardest one to fix or to intervene. So I think that's a big one. But I would say that the other one, the other way that I see it showing up is almost by omission. So ageism by omission, meaning, so what do I mean by that? I mean that our media is not out there saying that old people are bad, but our media is not showing age in positive light, and to showing some of these examples like the ones that Felix, and these ones you talked about. And so it's this ageism by omission, which I think happens a lot. And you can think about that from the respect of when the city is organizing an event, and they are thinking about, is it ADA compliant? Is it, are we having language accessibility? Are we having, but they don't think about the age aspect of that. So again, it's not that they're being ageist on purpose. It's just that they, by omitting thinking about age, they are creating a space that says, you're not super welcome here. We haven't thought about you.
Yeah. No, I never thought about that. The omission could be one of the biggest problems. Yeah,
well, it's funny because I think people, and I think healthcare is probably pretty bad too. That's not my area of expertise, but I do think that there's a lot of assumptions about age in the healthcare space. I guess I would say that the thing that's always funny to me, people talk about ageism, but it's not, most of the time, it's not perpetrated on purpose. Like people aren't necessarily out there, like other isms. People aren't necessarily out there perpetuating that ism on purpose. So much of it, and because our society has been really created on this precipice of the premise of age categorizes us. Anyway, I guess to say that we're socialized to not even notice that age is a thing. And so I guess I call out the internalized ageism, and I call out the ageism by omission because I think that that's more pervasive and it's more prevalent. And it's sort of insidious. It's not easy to see, but
to recognize it.
Yeah, so it's even to think about. You think about a campaign against ageism, it's like you have to get people to see themselves in that campaign. And if they are having ageist thoughts about themselves, they're not even going to pay attention because they're going to say, oh, that's not for me, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess I see that as being sort of the shadier side or the harder to see versions.
No, it's true. And something that we want to create in this space is giving the opportunity to people not just to know the notions of the problem, but also giving some solution, or practical solution. So what is one small behavior that in your case could help us to reduce ageism that we can all do this week, maybe?
Well, I think for me, a big one is acknowledging it in ourselves. So, and I think about this with social isolation, because it's a similar, social isolation is an area that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and it's similar in that it's sort of insidious, and it's, you know, it affects all parts of your life, and it can have a lot of painful negative ramifications. And I tell people all the time, one of the things you can do to combat it is to just acknowledge this idea that the same way my physical health is changing, or my mental health is changing, my social health might be changing, and that's okay. It's okay to say, hey, I'm a young mom. It's been a while since I had a good time,
Yeah,
you know, kind
yeah.
of thing. And so by me acknowledging that, I'm creating conversations in my community where people feel free to say, you know, me too. Or like, yeah, I had that experience too, as opposed to pretending it doesn't exist. So this sort of, and so I think on the ageism side, it's similar. You know, I shared, as somebody who's youngish, who studies aging, I receive ageism quite a bit. And I think by me acknowledging that I have that experience opens the door for other people in my community to say, like, I've had that experience too, or I've had a different kind of experience. And by naming it and talking about it, we can start to erode some of the stigma around it, which I think is really important. And I also think, so that's maybe more of a psychological kind of thing, but I think it's important. And the other thing I'd say is to just strike up a conversation with somebody in a different age bracket than you, and come from a place of curiosity.
No, this is a pretty great example. Maybe sometimes we don't take any action because we thought, oh, this is a bigger problem that I can manage or do something in order to change society or the community. But having a conversation could be a...
Yeah, when you're waiting in line at the store, you know, or, you know, waiting for the train or something, you know, just ask someone how their day's going, maybe a neighbor or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, one of the things that's always been one of my reactions when I feel like I'm receiving ageism against young people, against myself being young, is that it's really important to remember that the years you've been alive don't always equate to the amount of life you've lived, if that makes sense. So it's sort of like, somebody might be young, but that doesn't mean they've had a lot of experiences that can give them a lot of perspective on things that perhaps you've never experienced, and vice versa. And so I think just kind of coming at it with this mutual respect of, I've had a lot of experiences, I don't know what your experiences are, and I shouldn't assume that just because you're young, you don't have any.
And this is the reason that we need curiosity in order to understand, to connect with other people. I was making some research about you and your work, so I understand that you help Study Boston to plan an age-friendly city.
Yes.
Okay. What needs did you find, and what changed because of that work?
Yeah. So we just concluded a big needs assessment process for the city of Boston, and we're still in the midst of we're taking that information and creating an action plan. And we did this in 2017 as well. So it's been really interesting to see how things have changed since 2017, and obviously we've had a lot going on in our society since then. And I would say that the things that emerged mostly are the financial security. So this idea, having enough resources to, the nuance here is that it is both about having enough resources to meet basic need, but also about having financial resources to enjoy life.
Okay.
So this idea of, I want to go to the theater, I want to go to the art museum, I want to take a trip, I want to go out to dinner with my friends, but if my budget is so tight that I can't do those things, that's a need. And then I think the other the other thing that's been a little is access to food. Healthy food is sort of something I think that's come maybe post-pandemic. I'm not sure. That's interesting to me that sort of re-emerging as a need that we heard about. And then I think in general, also people's wanting places where they can find purpose and connection.
Yeah.
So that is, those are the things when people think about what do I need to age well. It's the financial resources and this access to food. And I think the access to food thing is not as clear cut as sort of like I have food or I don't. It's sort of like, do I have good quality food? Do I have enough food? This kind of thing. And so it's a nuanced conversation. And then this piece about wanting spaces to find purpose and connect.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's pretty important what you said before about not just surviving, but also enjoying life.
Right. Isn't that the point?
Because sometimes we thought like, okay, these people are receiving enough in order to live, but not enjoy life. This is true. And talking about that, I know that you co-founded a statewide coalition to end loneliness.
Yeah.
What works best to build social connection in neighborhoods?
I find that it is what I call micro interactions.
Okay.
So this is passing a neighbor on the street and nodding hello, or helping somebody with their bags across the street. These sort of very small, seemingly everyday kind of meaningless interactions that are daily and regular ways of being able to sort of renew a social contract with one another, to say, I see you, you see me, I'm maybe feeling a little good because I helped you, you're feeling a little good because you got help or you got somebody to talk to. And those kinds of things, I think are much more powerful than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
And I think as communities change, especially in Boston where we're seeing all kinds of change in the neighborhoods, it's very easy for those things to get lost, those micro, because you don't know who your neighbor is anymore, or the place you used to wait for the bus has moved across the street and now it's not near there's just, it changes that sort of rhythm of the community that I think can disrupt people's ability to have those interactions. And then it kind of becomes a slippery slope from there, where they're not having that sort of daily dose of, oh, somebody knows I exist. And then if you add on, the geographic dispersion of families, everybody's working, it's just, you can start to see how it can sort of decline into a state of isolation. And I also think it erodes at people's sort of self-esteem, which plays a big role.
Yeah, and talking about, for example, these small conversations, I can say that words matter. Every word matters, even what we thought about ourselves, what we say to other people. So what language should organizations use or avoid when they talk about older adults?
Well, I think what we know from sort of research and experts and people who think a lot about this is that, we should be talking about people of saying, people age 65 and older, or simply talking about older adults or older people, but really humanizing it, right? So not using the language of, elderly or aged or people who are aging. There's so much more to people than they're aging. And so, and they're not a homogeneous group, right? Everybody who's old is not the same. And so I think really being specific about who you're talking about, and really keeping the language of they are adults and they are people. Yeah. So using that kind of language I think is really important. And also, I think I think of age as an opportunity. So I think for organizations, if they're interested in trying to engage older adults or attract them or get to know them, I think using this language of, not do you need help, but rather like, we know you have a lot to offer the community and we want to, so they're really a positive and sort of opportunistic type of language, I think can be helpful.
I think that changed everything. When you humanize people, it sounds like a redundant, but it's true.
I know.
So what is in one practice in Spanish-speaking outreach that you wish every agency used?
Well, the other thing I think is really important when it comes to language is using inclusive language like we. Like we are a community, and we need
Nosotros.
we and us. You know, this is not just a program for you, the people who need it. It's a program for our community, and it's important that we know about it and we use it and we tell our friends about it. You know, this kind of thing. And so I think language of we and us can kind of reinforce that we are a community of people, and not old people over here and young people over here. I think that's really important. And I also think, and I don't know, this might be I don't know, cheesy or something, but I think that there's a real, when it comes to how agencies talk about community, I think there's reminding people that is how culture is created, is through these interactions of generations, right? And so one of the things I worry about, and this isn't just the Latino community, this is all community, that as our generations get further and further apart and have less and less in common, we start to lose the transmission of this culture, in terms of what are our traditions as Americans, as Bostonians, what are our beliefs, what are our, this sort of the things that make us unique. And so I think, I would think that trying to use that language of how do we maintain our culture and how do we kind of protect it and
maybe found this common ground for everyone.
Yes, right? that kind of language can really bring people together to say, oh yeah, I do care about that. I might not care about Meals on Wheels, or I might not care about this thing, but I care about the fact that where I come from and my beliefs, my culture is disappearing, and I care about keeping that alive. And so, I hope that young people care about that too, and want to be the sort of shepherds of it moving forward. So I think that language can be really unique and bring and sort of break through a lot of this ageist. I'm thinking of through the filter of somebody who's ageist against themselves. If they see that and they're saying, well, that's okay, I could do that because that's about my community, not about my age per se.
And this is the reason that this podcast for me is so important, because this is not just older people topics, or just the audience is for 65 plus. It's for everyone. Even if you are in your 20s or 30s, you can learn a lot about how we need to change our own narrative of ourselves, even for our family, for friends, and find some solutions, maybe some small ones or big ones. You are doing an amazing job for more than 15 years, or?
Yeah, I don't know, 10, we'll say.
Wow.
But I think that's so true, and I think that I think that one of the things, the other messages that I think I hope reaches young people who might be listening or watching is that, aging is a privilege that not everybody is afforded, and people die all the time. They die young and they die healthy, and so I think remembering that and remembering that that we see these wonderful examples of old age that you're bringing into this podcast and the community. If you want to get there, you have to start now.
Wow.
Or to start thinking about that. It's not something that just happens overnight. It's people where they end up in old age mostly says a lot about their path. And so I think just remembering that, I think, is really important. It's a blessing. So I think I got this part of you. Age is a privilege, it's a blessing. So not everyone, even us as a generation that we experienced the COVID-19, so we need to recognize that having, 60 plus years old is a great blessing. So we are going to wrap it up, our conversation with these last questions. What is one Boston project that makes you hopeful right now? There's several, but I think there is a project, a project called Activating Boston. It's a relatively small project that has been funded by the John Hancock Foundation in conjunction with Age Strong, the city's agency on aging, that has identified a handful of physical locations across the city. And what they have asked organizations and community members to do is activate those spaces as places for connection. So it might be taking an empty parking lot and saying, we want to create a place, we're going to put some picnic tables in there, we're going to do some art, we're going to do some planting, and it's community driven. So it's and it's paying the community to create these spaces throughout the city. And so there's been a few cool, they're all a little different in terms of how they achieve that goal, but I think that is something that, again, it's kind of going back to basics, to just say, what's in our community that we can, kind of build on and create sort of those spaces. And also just remembering that the built environment is so important when it comes to staying connected and to staying healthy, and that sometimes can take work to remember that and to get out of our homes and to, not just go from our home to the train every day, but rather maybe go to that park for an event or something like that. And so I think that's kind of a cool project. And then, I think, that's one.
Okay, no, it's perfect. What is your wish for how Boston Latino community talks about aging next year?
I think celebration is a word that would come to me. I wanted to keep celebrating it because I think it helps reinforce to ourselves that it's a privilege and a gift, but it also tells our young people and tells our community, like, we're proud of being, of making it 60 years in our lives or whatever, and we've accomplished a lot. And it's, and I think sort of showing off those accomplishments and much of what you're doing with this podcast, I think is a great example of that. So I would say celebrate.
So I want to end this conversation with this word, celebration.
Yes.
I want to celebrate your work.
Thank
I want
you.
to celebrate all your passion that you are sharing with us, this old knowledge. So, gracias a todos los que nos vieron el día de hoy. Recuerden que los subtítulos van a estar en español también en toda la conversación, en todo este video. Pueden encontrarnos en las redes sociales. Por favor, síganos en la red social de la Alianza Hispana. Manden sus preguntas. Queremos contestar. Queremos seguir creando estos espacios. As you said, we want to create some spaces for everyone. So, gracias otra vez. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Adiós a todos.
Bye-bye.